I'm Rod Stone from Stone Accounting and Business Advisory. Today we're going to talk about Australian tax returns, and specifically for people that live outside of Australia that might have fallen behind in the lodgement and compliance with, regarding their tax returns. What we find is that when people leave Australia and go and live in another country, the risk of compliance and falling behind in their tax returns is significantly greater. So we're going to talk a bit about why that is, what clients can do to get up to date, and why it's really important to do so. So basically, if you're an individual or a partnership or a trust or a company and you earn income in Australia, you probably have an obligation to lodge a tax return regardless of whether you live in Australia or whether you live overseas. One of the reasons why people fall behind in their tax returns when they go overseas is because we lose all the triggers and the reminders that are so prevalent in Australia. For example, when we live in Australia, you might be talking with family and friends, and they might be talking about the tax return that they just got, or they might be talking about their experience that they've just had with their accountant, and that serves as a bit of a trigger that we need to do something. We need to lodge our tax returns. Also, the ATO are very good with marketing and promoting the fact that we've got our tax returns coming up for their due date. They put things on the internet, they put adverts in a newspaper, so when we're flicking through them, we see them and we see that we need to lodge our tax returns on the 31st of October or before. Also, you might have a closer relationship with your accountant when you're in Australia, so he or she may be sending you reminders on email, or you might see them in public. And also the tax office send SMSs and emails and things like that. And the MyGov system serves for many purposes. And when we log into it, we do see reminders that we need to lodge our tax returns. So those things aren't easily available to people when they live overseas. The MyGov system is problematic when you've got an international phone number and you haven't set it up before you've left Australia. Certainly the ATO don't put print ads in the newspapers or on foreign TV channels overseas. So we lose all those triggers and reminders that we need to do something. Most people that we talk with, they know they've got to do a tax return, they've got to do something, but they're just not sure when the due date was, and time goes by so quickly that it turns from 1 year into 2 years, into 3, into 5, into 10 years that they might have fallen behind. So that's really common. And we're here to help. We can help you get up to date if you need that service. So why is it really important that, even if you don't live in Australia, that you keep up to date? It's really important for a couple of reasons. One, there's a financial fine, and two, there's a lot of adverse consequences if you don't keep up to date. So if you don't lodge your tax return or notify the tax return at the tax office that you don't need to lodge a tax return, then they may impose a penalty of $222 Australian dollars per month for each month that you're outstanding, up to a maximum of $1,110 per tax return. So one of the first questions we need to ask ourselves is, do we need to lodge a tax return? If the answer is yes, then we need to help you prepare and lodge that tax return and just get it lodged. If the answer is no, you still need to contact the tax office every year and let them know that you don't have to lodge a tax return. If you don't do that, the tax office assumes that you've got to lodge a tax return. So it's important to contact the ATO every year anyway. I've outlined the penalties, but there's a lot of adverse consequences that are non-financial directly. So if you have any plans to move back to Australia, or you have an unplanned visit to Australia for health reasons or something like that, here's some of the other things that are impacted by not having your tax returns lodged up to date. You may not get access to Medicare, and you may not get access to Australia's healthcare system if you're behind in your tax returns. You may not get your government benefits that you might be entitled to. You may not get the age pension. You will not get a business loan. You will not get a personal loan, and you will not get a home loan if you're behind in your tax returns. And you may not get access to your superannuation as well. So those other penalties that aren't direct penalties from the ATO are probably more important than the financial penalties. We've seen clients go through ordeals in relation to those things, which could have been avoided if they're up to date. So I want to give a couple of client examples. These are real world examples of clients that we've helped that have been behind in their tax returns and some of the things they had to go through to make sure that they got up to speed. So the first one was a basic individual, had lived overseas for about 15 years and came to us. They were referred to us from another client, and they were 10 years behind in their tax returns. So the first thing that we do with a client like that is we sit down, we have a chat, and we explain the penalties. We need clients to understand that there are penalties that the tax office may impose. The second step that we go through is to add that client to our tax agent listing. We're registered tax agents with the Australian Taxation Office. So when we add a client to our registered tax agent listing, we can then access all of the information that the tax office knows about the client, and we can check what is actually outstanding and what we need to do. So in this case, the client thought they were 10 years behind. Once we did a review of their account and we added them to our system, we found that they were 12 years behind. So we had 12 tax returns to do. That meant potentially $12,000 and something in ATO penalties. So the next step that we take is we contact the tax office directly, usually via a phone call, and we have a negotiation with them. So if there's penalties already on their account, we talk with the tax office and tell them that we would like them to remit those penalties, to get rid of those penalties. Quite often the tax office will impose the penalties after we lodge the tax returns as well. So it's really important that we have that discussion with the tax office and we get that confirmation that they're going to remit the penalties before we do any work. So it's in the tax office's best interest for our clients to get their tax returns up to date, and it's in our clients' interest to get rid of the penalties if we can. So that negotiation is usually pretty simple. They agree to get rid of the penalties and we give them a deadline of when we're going to get all the work done. I've been in this position for about over 26 years now, and I can't remember a time that we were not successful in getting rid of late lodgement penalties. We have a very good relationship with the tax office. We've got a very good lodgement record, and the tax office are generally very, very good to us and our clients. So we don't see the late lodgement penalties as something that will form part of the overall result, but we must let clients know that the tax office can impose those if they want. Once we've got to that stage, we then prepare and lodge the tax returns. When a client's on our list, we can access all that information from the tax office, which is generally about 90% of the work or information that we need to complete the client's tax return. So if you've lost records, you're worried about finding old PAYG payment statements or interest details, don't worry. We can get all that information. Usually we can get it very, very quickly, within a day, and we can start to put together the tax returns and start to get the client up to date. So that's another worry that clients have, and another reason why they don't address their outstanding tax returns, because they're worried they might not have that information. So what I'm saying is don't worry about that. Overall, in this case, this was a really good result. We got the 12 tax returns lodged. The client got a significant refund on 3 of the tax returns where they'd worked for wages. That tax refund in total was enough to cover our fees, plus a significant balance went into their bank account after we completed our work and lodged it. So that was a really good news story. Second example is an Australian businessman had been living overseas for 20 years, running and operating their business and living overseas. They wanted to take their family back home, take the wife and 2 kids back home and resume their life and live happily ever after in Australia. They found their dream home. They were ready to go back and purchase that home and live there. And when they went to get their home loan, they were rejected. And they were rejected because they had 17 years of tax returns outstanding. What that meant was the client then came to us, and then we went through the same processes in that first example. So put them on our listing, worked out what was outstanding, then started about updating the client's tax returns. In this case, though, they wanted to buy the home and they couldn't get the finance. They were moving there in 2 months' time, and they were in a bit of a panic. They also found that they couldn't get a Medicare card because of their tax returns. They wanted to update their driver's license and had a lot of problems with that. Their credit rating had been adversely affected from the finance rejection. They couldn't register an ABN in either individual name or an Australian business number in a company name. They couldn't set up the company they wanted to set up, all because they hadn't got their tax returns updated. They were behind, and they had a few other problems as well. So it took us about 2 months to get them up to date. As I said, we went through the same process. It put their whole plans for relocating to Australia back by 9 months. They missed out on the house that the that the husband, the wife, and the kids had fallen in love with. They found another beautiful house. They're happy there now, and they're living happily there. But you can see the issues that this causes if you have those sort of plans. So basically, in summary, if you ask yourself each year, do I need to lodge a tax return? If the answer is yes, you need to contact us and we can help you with that. If the answer is no, you still need to contact us, and then we need to let the tax office know that there's no requirement to lodge a tax return. Once you're on our list, we'll be contacting you each year. We'll be reminding you, and we'll be saying, hey, you live in America, the last 3 years you haven't earned any income in Australia. Have your circumstances changed, and do you need to lodge a tax return? So we will make sure that you stay up to date once you're on our list. And then the final closing message in summary is that despite how bad you think your situation is, we've probably seen worse, but it needs to be addressed, and it can be resolved really easily. And sometimes we get really pleasant results for clients. So if you're in that situation, please contact us. Please send us a message, drop a comment, get in touch with us through email or on the phone. Get in contact with us. We'll get back to you. We can make this process of getting up to date really, really easy. Thank you.